Hello, hello. Just going live on all the places, which is always a bit of a faff at the moment. But I hope you're really well. I'm just checking in because I made a deal with myself. I'm going to go live every day, and here I am on day 3. I'll be honest with you, I've been really poorly today. So I'm super under the weather. I actually had a nap, and I am not a person who naps at all normally. Anyway, we're here, it's all good. I wanted to come on today and talk to you about the story behind our brand messaging. We're called the Figure Bookkeeper, and that often divides people in terms of people thinking that either is or isn't for them, and it's always a good one to sort of explore. So I thought I'd jump in and do that. Before I do that though, it's a really good time just to say that we have an amazing event coming up. It starts tomorrow at 8 o'clock. So this time tomorrow, we will be live having a party online. So register if you haven't already. If you just go to bigweek.scoreapp.com or type in bookkeepersevents.com, which should redirect you. You can fill in just a few details and you'll get an invite to come along. We're hosting it on a new platform. We've done this kind of thing in our Facebook community, but we have made it super interactive so we can be on screen with you, which I'm really excited about. And we've got some really cool things coming up. I've just been writing the session for later in the week about purpose, and kind of ties back to the conversation that we're going to have this evening. And I'm really excited. There's so much going on. So be part of something amazing next week. Bookkeepersevents.com will take you to the right place. Right. The story of the six-figure bookkeeper. Why is this what we're called? I'm going to rewind a little bit because some people are surprised to learn that Joe Wood and I were complete strangers when we started a business together. So we met in the accountancy and sort of bookkeeping circles. We were often showing up at the same events. I can remember being at XeroCon when my little boy was in a pram, like not even one, I'm sure in a pram actually. And I'd bump into Joe. I remember being on the like a consulting session with her as well, with one of the professional bodies. It's like, this woman keeps showing up. And then we were both invited to speak at a conference. And I remember Joe coming up to me like the day before we were speaking, saying, I'm so nervous. And I was like, get a grip, it'll be fine. And Joe still gets nervous when speaking. I don't know why. I think that's, for me, we can talk about this another day. For me, this is one of those things where I'm just in my head. I know what I've got to do, and I'm just there with myself, talking through what I need to talk through. But I know for Joe, that's a really big thing. And anyway, she was preparing, and we were sort of talking and things. Anyway, we did our presentations or talks the next day, and Joe was talking about her goal to build a 6-figure practice. So she had just been made redundant from a job. She just bought a new house. She had teenage kids. I know how much kids eat. And she needed to replace her salary. And she was like, well, do you know what? I'm going to hold myself accountable. I'm going to set myself this goal. And this is what I'm going to do. And I'd just written Know Your Numbers, which is up there. And I was asked to speak about that. And I thought, well, I think the thing that people aren't talking about in this kind of space is goal setting. I think maybe I wrote a book because I thought that I could. I thought I've written so many blog posts, I could definitely write a book. But I think that might have been an unusual thought process. So I was invited to speak about that. And I thought, well, maybe the thing we really need to focus on here is nothing to do with the book. What we need to focus on is the goal setting part of this. Like, why do we hold ourselves back? Why do we stop ourselves from doing things like this? I believe it's because we decide these things aren't for us. And that is a massive problem I want to break down. And actually, we're doing a lot of that during Big Week next week. So register if you haven't already. So we were talking about that. We got together. We got on like house on fire, and we kept speaking on the phone and decided we needed to meet up. We met up in Reading because I was in Bristol, Joe was in the southeast in Kent, and we looked at a map and decided Reading was halfway. And we actually booked an Airbnb together, and we stayed together. We showed up with our food, and I don't even know what we had. I can't even remember actually, but it's so weird. Sharing an apartment with a stranger is mad. It was completely mad. And anyway, we worked, and we just needed to know that we could work. So we gave ourselves a project, decided that we could work together, and the rest is kind of history. But I didn't know anything about online business, marketing, Facebook groups, that kind of thing. And Jo had learned a lot about this. She's been doing lots of work on herself in terms of online business strategy. And she'd started a Facebook community a year before we met, and she called it the Six Figure Bookkeepers Club. So when we were talking about, well, what do we call this business we're going to set up in this weekend, we're together for the first time ever. And we were talking about we need to build a community and what we're going to call this community. Jo said, oh, well, actually, I've already got a community, and it had like 80 members or something. And I was like, well, let's just use that. Like, why would we think of something else? And we'd probably spent a lot of the evening talking about what should we call the business. And we'd gone through all those kind of aspirational names. If you ever watched The Apprentice, you know, when the teams get together and they're talking about how, I don't know, they have to name their teams, don't they? It's usually like a boys team and a girls team, and they have to come up with a name. I would love to be on The Apprentice. I would totally be there. It would drive me mad. I would be there though. So there's usually a boys team and a girls team, and they have to come up with a name, and they're always these really like ambitious, like growth related, I don't know if you're watching this, let me know in the comments, help me out with some of those completely stereotypical apprentice team names. But they're always like aspire and energy and those kind of things. So we've gone through all of those kind of names for what should we call this group. And then there was this part of me and Jo that thought, Six Figure Bookkeeper, like using that kind of numbersy financial goal, it feels a bit gross. And I'll be honest, there's still part of it from time, which is probably, you know, really a good reason to talk about this evening. It definitely had those feelings of, like, does this feel like a good sort of thing to put out there? Jo had decided she wanted to build a six-figure practice. So that, you know, that was why that goal existed. It was a turnover goal, because after tax, the salary that she would take was the money that she needed to take home to cover her bills, etc. So it had a logical reason there. But we know, and we know from having a community of 24,000 or so bookkeepers and accountants that the financial goal isn't always the goal. But I think that when people come to the community, and the reason the community's grown so quickly is not because of that financial goal. And I can see lots of you watching, like I can see Hayley and Karen here, and lots of people I know. If you've seen the group, you might have thought, well, that financial goal isn't the goal that is for me. But there's something about the ambition that's tied to the goal. It's the ambition that's tied to the goal that is the reason that name of that group appeals to you. And I don't know, and I would welcome thoughts on this. I don't know how we express that without using a very like aggressive name. I don't know. So I don't think there's an answer here, but that's the reason the group's called what the group's called. But six figures doesn't just mean money. And actually, we've got members from around the world in the group as well. We've got members in countries where six figures would be a really disappointing turnover figure. So it's not about that. I think that's the thing about branding, isn't it? You sort of put your mark somewhere and then you build around that. But it's about what it means to people. So a lot of the time, what it means to be a six-figure bookkeeper isn't anything to do with the money, although we'll have people who come along and then they earn more. I was looking through testimonials today, actually, and people saying, I've had the best month of my life. I've hit this target. I'm now able to charge X, Y, Z to my clients. Haven't known how to do that before. But it's also about work-life balance, being able to have time with your kids. It's about being able to finish and do the school run. It's about not feeling bad, for guilty to this idea of an employer, even though your employer is a big organization, that you need to leave early or go on holiday or get married or something and ask for time off. I remember one of my friends was talking today about, or over the weekend maybe, about how she hadn't got enough leave to do something, and that she had to work over the weekend to give herself the leave. And I never want to be in that situation. And maybe that's something that you relate to, that you need that flexibility, whether it's for children or for health reasons, or just because you've got other things that you want to do as well. That's what six figures means. It's that mindset. It's not a number. It's about what that enables you to do. And having around this is so important to me. I think we stop each other. I'm someone who deeply lost my confidence when I'd had children, when my daughter came along, not my daughter's fault, but that experience really knocked my confidence, and had to really go on a journey to rebuild it. And I think that having been there, my ability to kind of believe in myself, my ability to achieve things for the future, and even kind of wanting to go out there and set wild goals, it felt like it wasn't possible anymore. And that's sad. Like, I look back on me of 2015, 2016 and think, oh my gosh, like, I'd really like to go to her and say, actually, you could do whatever you want to do. But like, that time has passed. So it's kind of us trying to pass that on and help other people. Now, the other thing, when we're talking about the story behind the story behind our brand messaging, the other thing you might see if you follow me personally on LinkedIn or on Instagram, where I don't know where you're watching this, but on one of those platforms, is you'll always see, and one of my friends always says to me, oh, you're out there helping the kids, aren't you? Always out there helping the kids. Personally, I've set myself a mission to positively impact 1 million children in poverty by helping their parents to earn more from bookkeeping. That is part of the Six Figure Bookkeeper mission as well. There are things that we've built into our business, Six Figure Bookkeeper, where if particular things happen in the business, maybe one of our members completes a program, or we're doing a talk at an event, we'll often ask people to scan a QR code, and then we're able to make a donation on your behalf. And often that is towards projects that are impacting poverty, sometimes in the UK, more often in other parts of the world. And we've been able to contribute towards food crises, water shortages, mosquito nets, all those kind of things you'd expect, but also do things like pay for bookkeeper training for women who are thinking about starting a business in a less privileged country than our own, to make sure that those businesses, or give them the best chance of making those businesses a success. And I'll tell you why this matters so much. It matters so much, obviously, because everyone, wherever you are in the world, everybody deserves the best chance of having the best life. Like that, we're very fortunate. I'm very fortunate to have been born in the UK in a situation where I live in a country where I'm not going to starve, right? I'm going to have a roof over my head and I'm not going to starve. And some people aren't that fortunate, and it unfortunately goes back to those like very basics. But when Joe and I were thinking about our purpose quite recently, even just this year, and we were thinking, like, why do we do this? What's the real reason we do this? We had to really do a lot of digging. Like, we do a lot of work on personal development, but we hadn't really challenged ourselves from that angle. And we're sort of talking about how we've got a 6-figure business. And just like I said to you at the beginning, there are lots of things that go along with that, where it's like, oh, like, is this really the message that we want to put out to the world? And so the message around positively impacting those 1 million children is actually like feels like the philanthropic complete opposite of that goal. It's coming at it from a completely different angle. And what we realized when we worked through this, and I'll tell you my own version of this, and if you come to Big Week, Jo will share her version of it as well. But I grew up in 80s and 90s, born in early 80s. My mum was a single parent and did everything she could to work part-time around her children, me and my sister, and bring us up. And she did the absolute best she could with the resources she could. And she did a great job. The challenge is that even today, even now, when we've gone through a pandemic and people have had to work from home, and we've got all this technology, we've been able to move from offices to home. We've been able to work around children who haven't been going to school. And yet, the bookkeeping and accounting industry is still saying that there are shortages of people for their full-time roles. There's a talent shortage, all this stuff. And yet on the other side of it, I'm seeing that there's this massive pool of bookkeepers and accountants, not all who really wanted, like, first choice to be bookkeepers and accountants in business. They probably started out their career like me, wanting to be an employee, or maybe didn't know that working for themselves was an option. And there's this mismatch where there's a talent shortage, and then on the other side there's loads of qualified people who aren't able to find the right work for them. And why is that not being fixed? Like, why? Well, the reason it's not being fixed is because on this side, the employer side, I really believe this, and sorry employers, there are some great employers out there, but there's also this massive gap where work still doesn't work. And I think about my mum in the 80s with no technology. Like, I can literally remember her typing Peter Rabbit out of a Peter Rabbit Beatrix Potter book on a typewriter because she was learning to touch type for a job as a secretary. She did payroll. And it was maybe like an electronic typewriter. So I can remember my mum learning to type. And so that was like the best technology. We had a knitting machine in our house as well. That's another story. But that was like the best technology that we had in the house. We didn't have a computer. I didn't have a computer till I was a teenager. And so she didn't have those tools. And so that makes a lot of sense. Like, she did the part-time work that was possible for her around her family. And yet I speak to bookkeepers and accountants today who are or are not single parents with their children at home and can't get part-time work that works for them around their families. And yet we spent like 6 months, does anyone remember 2020? 6 months or 9 months or something at home with computers with our children at home, and that was okay. And now it's not okay. And I don't understand what happened. So there's this massive mismatch still. So why is it I'm 41 years on, the experience my mum had as a mum in the 80s with no technology hasn't been fixed by technology? And it's because it's nothing to do with technology. It's to do with culture, employment culture. Something broken in the industry. So six-figure mindset. Why are we called the six-figure bookkeeper? It's not about six figures. It's about what's possible for you if you set goals and aspirations. And you know, there are so many women out there who are making their own great choices for their future, doing the best they can with the resources that they've got. So building their own businesses or making work for them. That's brilliant. I love that. But also the other part, that flip side that gets me past the ick of the six figures, is that we're able to make this impact. And if we can help people to earn more from bookkeeping, whether that's being employed or being self-employed, you know, we obviously do the self-employment part of this really well. Actually, this is another conversation, but self-employment, that's a phrase that has to change because we're not employed when we're self-employed. We've got to stop thinking like employees. But if we can help people to earn more from bookkeeping, whether they're working for themselves or whether they are going to become great employees, we can impact the kids. So the kid I was in the 80s, she doesn't have to go through that anymore in 2024 because something's changed. And it really goes down to those roots of what's it like to grow up as a child in like relative poverty. I completely appreciate it. UK version of poverty is not the same as Ethiopia version of poverty, but there's so much we can do here, and I'm excited about what we can do. I'm also like completely overwhelmed by what I feel needs to be done. But that's what we're about. That's what the brand is about. Like, we really care about this. There's actually some exciting stuff happening that you might not have seen, where Joe and I obviously work on programs that support bookkeepers and accountants as well with building businesses. But there's also some great stuff that we're doing at the moment to understand how we can support bookkeepers with training, because there's a barrier to entry to the industry. There's a barrier to entry around how do you even get your exams? Like, there's like a budget issue here. So there's something we're trying to break down there, and you know, that's a work in progress. It's very exciting, but that's what we're about. And I hope you've like enjoyed learning a little bit more about it. If you haven't yet, please register for Big Week. It starts tomorrow at 8:00 p.m. We've got a little party, tell you about how it's going to work. You'll get to understand the platform that we're using. It's called Butter. If you register, you'll get the link to join. There's limited places. So if you want to be there live, you've got to get there live, but we're also going to try and stream it onto YouTube at the same time. So if you don't want to be in the room with us, you can watch it on YouTube. hopefully I'll have my voice by tomorrow, and then it all kicks off properly on Tuesday. So super excited. Thanks for being here, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.